Oklahoma lakes are shrinking. The ongoing drought is drying up reservoirs which supply drinking water and irrigation across the state. Few places are suffering as much as southwest Oklahoma, where falling lake levels are threatening one of the state's principal crops.
Falling lake levels are becoming an all too familiar sight in Oklahoma. The winter months saw boats at Oklahoma City's Lake Hefner sitting in the mud as the lake dropped to just 52% of capacity. Canton Lake in northwest Oklahoma was already down more than 9 feet before Oklahoma City officials began drawing water from the lake last month to help replenish Hefner. Receding shorelines can also be seen at Lake Thunderbird near Norman and Lake Stanley Draper in South Oklahoma City. While Oklahomans welcomed the rains last week, Associate State Climatologist Gary McManus says they weren't enough to win the drought.
We just came out of our driest May through December on record for the state of Oklahoma, so dating back to 1895. It was an extremely dry period. If you add January and parts of February onto that, it was probably the second or third driest May through, let's say, February on record.
The latest U.S. Drought Monitor shows the entire state still suffering drought conditions ranging from severe to exceptional, and it's not expected to get better anytime soon.
The latest outlook from the National Weather Service's Climate Prediction Center does have that drought continuing or maybe even intensifying through May for much of the Great Plains, including Oklahoma. So, that's certainly not written in stone. That could change, but that's what the federal forecasters are seeing right now.
McManus points out the Dust Bowl of the 30s lasted for nearly a decade, and while no one is predicting a repeat of those times, the outlook for an early end to this drought is not good.
We're sort of in an unfavorable time with the oceanic patterns. We've had a couple of La Niñas recently, which tend to bring the southern United States warmer and drier weather. And some of the other oceanic indicators are pretty unfavorable.
Southwest Oklahoma is one of the areas hit hardest by the drought. State Representative Don Arms is a farmer and understands how the dry conditions are affecting the region.
If this drags on, I think we're going to be seeing not only the inability to raise crops, which is a big deal to agriculture, but also the inability to deliver water to homes.
The drought is clearly evident at Lake Lugert Altus. The U.S. government began construction on the reservoir in 1941 to supply irrigation water to southwest Oklahoma. Tom Buchanan is manager of the Lugert Altus Irrigation District.
We irrigate about 50,000 acres. We have a main canal that runs just south of Altus that's about 32 miles long, and then we have an additional 300 miles of smaller ditches and laterals that serve the individual farms off of that. We primarily grow cotton. We grow irrigated cotton, which is a crop that is very well suited to our climate. And when we have water in the lake, we can produce yield-wise and quality-wise with anybody in the world.
And there's the rub. Buchanan says the amount of water in the lake is far below what would be considered normal.
Sometimes I would guess we'd be somewhere between 6 and 10 foot down from our spillway. So as you look behind me and see that what I would call the bathtub ring, you can see that we are down way more than 10 foot. So we are probably about a fourth of what we should be.
The drought is also visible along the shorelines, which normally approach the surrounding mountains, but now show wide sandy beaches. An irrigation canal used to supply water to surrounding farms has been shut down to preserve the water that's left in the lake. Officials released just 5 inches of water for irrigation in 2011, about 1/3 the usual amount.
So we ended up missing the 11 crop as a result of inadequate supplies. And then summer of 12 came around and we weren't even able to release the 5 inches. We had 0 release in 2012 for irrigation purposes. The first time in the history of this project. So the first time in 66 years, there was no water released for irrigation.
Buchanan says losing the cotton crop would be a huge financial blow to southwest Oklahoma. In a normal year, the area produces about 150,000 bales of cotton, worth anywhere from $60 to $80 million.
Then, depending upon what type of economist you are, how does that turn over at least 3 times in your local community? We're looking somewhere around $240, $250 million is what a cotton crop has on southwest Oklahoma, and then that continues to roll on out into the rest of the economy.
It's too soon to know how this year's cotton crop will be affected.
We won't plant our crop until late April, early May. So there's still a lot of time for things to change, and we have our fingers crossed and certainly all of our toes crossed, hoping that we'll get adequate rain in our watershed to fill this lake and give us the storage we need.
The effect on agriculture isn't the only concern at Lake Lugert Altus. The lake suffered a major fish kill in January, and dead fish still litter the shores. It's unclear whether the drought caused the fish kill, but Buchanan believes it was a contributing factor.
Warm water levels, which we've had, low water levels, which we've had, and then water that has a fairly high salt content in it. And when you're in western Oklahoma, all of your water has more salt in it than most people realize. So if those are the causes, then everything lined up to be the perfect storm.
With the drought maintaining its grip, lawmakers are considering several measures to provide relief to embattled farmers and ranchers. A House committee this week approved a measure by Representative Dale DeWitt, which would allocate $10 million for drought relief. Representative Arms has introduced a similar bill. He believes that $10 million figure might be a little low.
$10 million spread across the state spreads pretty thin. So I wouldn't be opposed to even asking for more money. And I think of all times, in my 10 years in the legislature, this is as severe of a crisis as we've seen financially.
Arms believes there's really just one solution to the crisis.
We're going to have enough rain that we're sick of rain to fix this drought. This drought is a long way from being cured.